She sued her neighbor after his renovation killed her dog. She wasn't suing over the renovation, she was suing because her dog was dead. The dog owner had lived on Crescent Mill Road for 11 years. A quiet woman in her mid-50s, she'd converted the back half of her property into a small hobby kennel. Nothing commercial, just 4 rescued greyhounds she'd spent the better part of a decade rehabilitating. Her neighbor to the east had moved in 3 years prior, a general contractor by trade, the kind of man who considered every weekend an opportunity to improve something. By most accounts, their relationship had been cordial. Borrowed tools, exchanged casseroles at Christmas, occasional waves from driveways. Nothing extraordinary. Until the fence. In early March, the neighbor began replacing a shared cedar fence along their property line, a project he estimated would take 2 weekends. It took 7. During that time, he used a hydraulic post driver and industrial concrete mixing equipment, running work from 7 in the morning until sometimes past 5 in the evening. He pulled permits for the fence itself. What he did not pull permits for was the drainage channel he excavated along the base of the fence line, a trench he dug to redirect runoff from his newly expanded patio. 2 weeks after the trench was filled and the fence completed, one of the greyhounds, a 10-year-old female named only as the oldest dog in court documents, was dead. The dog owner's attorney laid out a case that was equal parts grief and forensic detail. A veterinary pathologist had conducted a necropsy and found acute kidney failure consistent with ethylene glycol poisoning, the primary ingredient in concrete admixture accelerants. The plaintiff's theory was methodical. The neighbor's concrete work had introduced chemical runoff into the shared soil, contaminating a low-lying area where the dogs habitually drank pooled rainwater. She submitted soil samples taken from that corner of her yard showing trace levels of glycol compounds. She submitted the vet bills. She submitted a grief counselor's letter, and she submitted a figure, $47,200, covering the necropsy, emergency veterinary care for 2 other dogs showing symptoms, emotional distress, and the estimated lifetime rehabilitation costs she'd already invested in the deceased animal. She testified for 40 minutes. She did not cry until she described finding the dog at 6 in the morning, pressed against the fence. The neighbor's attorney was methodical in his own right. He argued that glycol contamination from a single residential concrete pour was scientifically improbable at toxic concentrations. He brought in a civil engineer who testified that the drainage trench, if anything, would have directed runoff away from the kennel area, not toward it. He pointed out that the soil samples had been taken 6 weeks after the project's completion. Plenty of time, he suggested, for contamination from other sources to appear. He reminded the court that the neighbor had complied with all permit requirements for the fence. He was, his attorney said, a professional who knew what he was doing. He had not been negligent. He had been a good neighbor doing permitted work on his own property. The neighbor himself took the stand and said quietly that he was sorry about the dog. He just didn't believe he had killed her. Then the plaintiff's attorney submitted Exhibit 14. It was a photograph taken from the neighbor's own phone, retrieved through Discovery, time-stamped 3 days before the fence project began. In it, the neighbor stood in his backyard beside what appeared to be an unmarked 50-gallon drum. The drum matched the description of a type used to store polyurethane foam sealant, a product that, when improperly disposed of, breaks down into compounds chemically similar to those found in the soil samples. The drum was not purchased for the fence project. A receipt, also recovered in Discovery, showed it had been purchased 8 months earlier for a separate basement waterproofing job. A job the neighbor had done without permits, without disclosure, and had never mentioned. The drum was gone by the time anyone thought to look for it. The judge ruled in favor of the plaintiff. She awarded $31,400, less than the full amount requested, reduced by the court's assessment that the emotional distress component was partially speculative, but the chemical contamination claim held. The soil evidence, combined with the photograph and the undisclosed prior use of the compound on the same property, established enough of a causal chain to satisfy civil liability. The neighbor was ordered to pay within 90 days. He did not appeal. The 2 neighbors have not spoken since. The remaining greyhounds are still in the yard on Crescent Mill Road. The fence, the finished, permitted $800 a panel fence, still stands between their properties and likely always will. Here is the question the case leaves behind. If the neighbor genuinely believed he hadn't caused the dog's death, does his silence about the drum make him negligent or just human?